Hello everyone, Nerdleen here, and today we're doing another different Edain Mod video. Today we're looking at a tier list for all of the units for Gondor. Now, I got a bit inspired to do this because originally, when I did like my top 10 heroes, top 10 pikemen, I was like, okay, I'll go into each one individually for every faction. Then I thought, why not do it a little bit simpler? Why not make things a bit more simplistic? So what I've done is, I've got all of the unit cards for all of the different units. It took me a while to get all these together, by the way, because apparently these aren't actually JPEG files, but we'll go into that at a different time. But now, so the purpose of this is basically say, I like all these units, but this is what I think of each of these units in general. Not so much for them specifically in their faction because of buffs from heroes, their powers, etc. But more of like just their value to the faction as a whole. So say like the Dol Amroth Cavalry, they're really good. They might be A, they might not be A. But I'm going to try and sort this out a little bit to be Swordsman first. So any unit that does specifically slash, chop, any like sword damage, sword, axe, a sharp edge, that's not a pike. And then we're going to look into pikemen. Sorry, I'm only just doing this now. Probably should have done this to begin with, but it's a new thing. We're having fun with it. We'll see how it goes. So we'll look at our swordsmen, our pikemen, our archers, our elites. I guess these are technically swordsmen and these are a bit of a mix. Our cavalry and our siege. We'll put cavalry before siege. Yeah, that looks lovely. So, firstly, we have our swordsmen. Gondor have 5 different swordsman troops out of their entire roster. And I must say that they are all really good. They're all solid, strong, dependable units. But, firstly, Gondor soldiers. Where do I put the Gondor soldiers? Used to be a meme around some communities because back in BFME 2 days, they were garbage. Well, I say garbage. They were okay, but they were so easily squashed by anything and everything. But now they're actually really strong and dependable. Their block formation is a thing that's been around since BFME 1. Gives them extra armor for reduction in speed. They're 15 in the units. They've got pretty decent health, pretty decent damage. I believe it's 46 slash damage. I've actually got this all written down somewhere. Just looking for it now. And yeah, Gondor soldiers, really dependable units. So, and also, in the faction, you can reduce their costs. You can they got all the kinds of upgrades like you expect from most of Gondor's roster. They can get any upgrades. Although in one version where their cost is half thanks to Denethor, they do lose the ability to have all their upgrades, including their formation. So where do I put Gondor soldiers? I'm going to put them at B tier. They're exactly what you need in the early game. They're good, they're dependable, but not too strong that in the late game they're going to be the thing you want the most of. That we'll go into later. So next we have the Ringlovel Swordsman. Now this unit, I'd say, if you can get an early signal fire and potentially even use the Baragon signal fire exploit, which I detailed in a video earlier this week, Ringlovel Swordsmen are S tier. However, they're definitely an A tier unit because in the early game they perform better than Gondor soldiers against troops that aren't heavily armoured. Because their whole thing, and I've actually got this set up here so you can see everything. So we've got Gondor soldiers, which yet they can get all their upgrades. They can go to block formation. But then Ringlovel Swordsmen have a thing called Cutting Blades. The envoys deal additional damage against enemies without heavy armor, but only moderate damage against enemies with heavy armor. Now, if you actually read on the stats for every single unit, the stats of the Ringlovel Swordsman, they don't do slash damage like some of their other sword type units. Instead, they do a damage called chop damage, and chop damage is actually something that most early game armor types are weak to. They do, I believe, 150% damage, where slash is 100%. So this unit has the exact same amount of damage. Well, actually, no, it has a little less damage. It has, compared to the 46 slash of the Swordsman, they have a 40 chop. But then they add 50% onto that to units without heavy armor. So Mordor Orcs, so that's 60 hit points of damage that's going through. So that's pretty much one hit from one of these guys, and that's going to kill a Mordor Orc. It will do substantial damage to any unit until they get heavy armor. And I don't mean like Tower Guard, like they have heavy armor. No, I mean you need to pay the money to make it so this unit is not worth getting. That is how good this unit is. And if you could get it en masse through Denethor's ability, then I would put this at S tier. And if you were to exploit it with Baragond, it would also be S tier. But if you're going to get it the normal way, the Signal Fire does take some time to get the Errand Riders up and running. And sometimes it does actually glitch. I don't know where it's gone to, but oh well. But yeah, Ringlovel Swordsman, let's just get back out of there. Ringlovel Swordsman, A tier. Perfect early game unit, not so effective in the late game, even though they can get upgrades. Lasarnak Axeman next. Now, their special thing is that they do extra damage to structures, which, yeah, that's okay, but Gondor has so many different ways of buffing attack damage, and they do the exact same, they do the same damage as the Ringlovel Swordsman, so 40 damage, but instead of chop damage, it's slash damage. So they do less damage than your Gondor soldiers. They're the same size unit, but they do less damage overall, which unfortunately puts them in C tier. They're still a good unit. If you're going to play the harass game in the early game, you don't want to go Ringlovel Swordsman and rule the battlefield against an enemy, then the Lasarnak Axemen, they are pretty decent. They are pretty much the same as the Ringlovel Swordsman in every other capacity. They've got pretty much everything the same. Everything else is the same. Their damage, their costs, their command points. The only thing is though, in my opinion, Ringlovel Swordsmen do much better in the early game than the Lasarnak Axemen can do comparatively in the late game. They do the same amount of damage, so even though they lose damage in the late game, these aren't gaining any damage in the late game either. But yeah, that's my opinion. Next, we have the Knights of Dol Amroth. Well, sorry, no, not the Knights, the Foot Soldiers of Dol Amroth. So, what requires you to get this unit is you need to build the Border Guard House. So that's your special outpost building. And most special outpost buildings have these special units. And you know what? I may not make these very often, but honestly, if I did make these more often, they're S tier. Dol Amroth soldiers are amazing. They are absolutely amazing. Massive health pool, twice as much damage as a Gondor soldier, and it's worth it because their price is actually quite expensive. But they take the same amount of time to recruit, so it's not exactly you're wasting time on them. They recruit from another building, so you don't need to have a barracks and a border stronghold, for example, although you should have both, because what the Dol Amroth soldiers do, now you don't want to get many of them, but what their ability is, they give a map, not a map wide, they give a pretty sizable leadership to all of your other infantry. They give them an extra 25% damage, and that's why I said Lasarnak Axemen aren't that good, because just throw some Dol Amroth troops in, and even your heroic units, the Guards of the Citadel, the Citadel Guard, Guards of the White Tower, Citadel Guard, they all will get that same upgrade, and it's really good. It is really good. So Dol Amroth Swordsmen, they get the S tier. I don't make them a lot. I should make them more, because they just make Gondor early game, and in late game, they are destructive powerhouses when they get leveled up properly. And finally, for our melee infantry, we have the Guards of the White Tower. Now, this is a unique unit because you can only get it after you give Boromir the ring. And I was hoping I'd find the ring before I started making this video, but after 10 minutes of searching and not finding anything, I decided I'm not going to get them. Basically, they have a super powerful buff. They're fully upgraded to begin with because while Boromir's around, you get Forge Blaze heavy armors for your troops. These guys get that in base, and if you've seen them in the Defender Shire map when playing as Gondor, they're also really, really, really strong. Like, oh my god, they are ridiculously good. But the only thing is, the only way you can get them is if you have Boromir as the ring hero. But again, they do a lot of really, really good damage. Comparing them to Dol Amroth Swordsman, which I've put in S tier, they've got 2.5 times the amount of health, nearly 3 times the amount of slash damage, and all that they're required is to have Boromir, and he can summon permanent units of these, and you can get them from a level 3 barracks for free. You can get 3 more units of them. I'll just show it the requirements on here. So yeah, 1,100 resources. So they are twice as expensive as Dol Amroth soldiers. But again, if Boromir gets the ring, he can summon permanent units, permanent versions of them as well as the actual 3 you're allowed on here. You can get more than that. So don't believe you can only get 3. You can get more than 3. I believe you can get a total of 5 if you use Boromir's abilities when he first gets the ring and then before he dies. They're really good. Their support abilities are tremendous. Let's get back out of there. And the only problem is, though, you need to get the ring. They are really good, though. I'm going to put them at A tier. The only thing is, their leadership is very similar to the Dol Amroth soldiers, and these can be summoned on any map that has an outpost, which is nearly every map in the game. In fact, it should be every map in the game. You can get Dol Amroth soldiers, while Guardians of the White Tower you can only get if you actually find the ring and give it to Boromir before the opponent. That's the only real thing. In fact, I'm going to bump that down to B tier, just because there's so many restrictions behind this one single unit. So that's all the swordsmen. Pretty balanced out. Next we have Pikeman. Gondor Pikeman. You might think, I'm going to put them the same as B tier with Gondor swords because they're decent. Actually, I'm going to put them at C tier. They're not a bad unit. They aren't. However, you have 2 other amazing pikeman options you can choose from. And honestly, the abilities that the Gondor pikemen have, they don't get a block formation like the Gondor soldiers do. Let me show you what they get. If I'm not mistaken, they get a porcupine or skill trim formation. They used to get a actually, I might be getting this wrong, but in the Age of the Ring mod, they have a block formation as well. I believe, yeah, it's from the Age of the Ring that they have an actual block formation. If they had a block formation, I'd put them at B tier. But because they have a porcupine formation, which means they're stationary, they can't move, and they're dealing less damage because they're forced into defensive stance, just makes them weaker. I've never liked porcupine formation, not even back in the base game. So unfortunately, they are at C tier. Next, we have the Pelargir Trollbenders. Now, this is a unit you need to watch out for. And their formation is hilarious. We're going to go back into this again because I want to show them off. So, pretty standard unit. 293 health at level 2, but at level 1 they do have only 320 health, so it's not a big difference. Comparing them to the pikemen, they do the same amount of damage, got the same amount of health, same command points. Their cost is pretty much the same, except you have to actually have the errand riders, which isn't that hard, and you can exploit it. Although this is thinking about not exploiting it. But yeah, pretty much the exact same stats. However, they have an amazing ability called the Trollbender formation. They gain 50% armor against monsters and can't be knocked back, but deal less damage. So it's the same as being Porcupine. They deal less damage, but the formation spreads them out so that any monster that comes near is going to get messed up, and while in this formation, they can't be knocked back. Only from hitting them from the back will they actually take any substantial damage. And in this formation, it's hard to see what stance they are. And because it's not a block formation, their speed isn't reduced either. They're still at this standard speed. This makes them incredibly good. They're good against large cavalry charges. They're good against any type of monster. Mimikill, don't expect it to last long. Trolls. Basically, this unit, if you're fighting against Mordor, and I imagine the same with true when fighting against the Misty Mountains, you want monster slayers. These troll benders are amazing. But back out of there, let's just get back into here. So where I put these troll benders, they're at A tier. Fiefdom units are actually really good, and you should consider getting more of them in your gameplay if you can. They are really good. Now, Gondor Tower Guard. This is where it gets a bit tricky, because I love this unit. I love this unit so much. They're really good. They're really efficient. However, they have one major drawback in the fact that they aren't as good as the Trollbenders, in my opinion, because their block formation is amazing. However, it makes them susceptible to AoE damage, which if you play against AI, you'll always have to fight against siege units. You'll always have to fight against some AoE damage like Witch King, Gandalf, Saruman. So that extra what, 75% block against, and a lot of speed reduction to try and fight off a large wave. They are really good at holding the line. You do not want these Tower Guard alone. You want them to be supported by a strong archer line, such as the Ithilien Rangers or Gondor Archers. But definitely, you don't want these guys to be alone. They're tanky. They are really tanky, but they don't do much damage. Their performance in dealing damage is suboptimal at times because of the fact they do specialist damage. What specialist damage is pikeman damage. So pike damage is half as efficient against swordsman, and that's what your enemies are going to mostly be throwing at you. They're really good against enemy cavalry. Don't get me wrong. A Rohan, a Mordor spamming monsters, going to have a hard time, except the trolls, if they stop before they hit with their charge and they just punch you, that's a whole unit knocked down, constantly getting punched over and over and over again, and they can't fight back. So unfortunately, Tower Guard, they are going to be at C tier. I love the unit, they're amazing, but they need a lot to perform well. And they're very close to being A tier. But we're going to put the Guards of the White City at A tier instead. Because, firstly, it's your heroic units. It's really strong. There's 5 in a unit instead of the 10 or 15 we've seen in other units. Same as the Guards of the White Company. But what makes the Citadel Guard stand apart is the fact that they can, 1, switch from pike to sword. So then when they choose to do specialist damage, they can do massive damage to cavalry, but then they can switch to sword and do slash damage. And they actually have different stats to each of them. So it's 255 slash or specialist. They do the exact same amount of damage with both types of weapon. So in a situation against a large cavalry fight, get your pikemen out. For Gondor, you're going to win. You're fighting against a large horde of orcs. For Gondor, get your swords out. You're going to win. And if you ever get them to level 5, you get a mini Beregond ability to make a building invulnerable. Do you know how important that is on a military building when you use Denethor's emergency mobilization? You can spam out Gondor's soldiers like crazy. Or on a signal fire, you're going to get Aragorn out. You're going to get some pikemen out to counter those trolls that are standing right next to your building. Or you want to save it. Protect a gate. You can't get into the base anymore. Protect the citadel. You're not getting any armor reduction on our buildings. They're really good. Yes, you're not going to get level 5 very often, but there are times you can. And Faramir, who is a hero I kind of don't use very much, but if you do use him a lot, you'll know for a fact having Faramir on the field to buff these guys up to level 5 fast can make a late game situation from a bad to a quite manageable situation. I don't use them a lot myself because I normally get to the late game. I normally get to the end game before the late game. But when I get Forge Blades and Heavy Armor, I consider this unit. And the Palantir Guard of Arnor are just as good as well. So yeah, definitely worthy of A tier. So that's all of our mainline infantry, swordsmen and pikemen. Next we have archers. Morthon bowmen. Their specialty is that they're good against ranged units. Their ability is that they can get themselves armor for a reduction in speed. D tier. Protection against ranged units, when you are yourself a ranged unit, is so inefficient. Because you don't want to be getting hit in the first place, and their range is appalling. Compared to the range of Ithilien Rangers and your Gondor archers, you have 45 less range than your Gondor archers, your base archer. 350 range is one of the shortest ranges for infantry base infantry archers I've ever seen. The fact that they can slow themselves down as well. They're not dwarves. If they get charged at by any cavalry, and I mean any, even bloody warg riders, one charge, they're dead. Doesn't matter if you're good in ranged combat. You're supposed to be fighting the melee infantry to kill them off, not worrying about your own safety with them, because archers don't focus other archers. That's not how the triangle works. You're meant to protect yourself against cavalry. If they have knockback resistance, then they might be C or B tier. But an ability as appalling as that, and they're the same cost as trollbenders. I don't like this unit. I really don't. I avoid this unit at all costs. Gondor archers, however, I think are actually at B tier. Because if you get these guys fully leveled up, give them fire arrows, heavy armor, banner carriers. Their stance is actually really good. You get into melee combat in an enemy base with your fire arrows. You can give yourself 30% extra damage plus 25% extra damage if you go into aggressive stance, and all it is a 15% reduction in range, which is still more than the Morthon bowman. And the fact that you're reducing your range means you can put yourself into a better situation to deal massive amounts of damage to your opponents. And by the way, the Morthon Vale archers do the same amount of damage as the Gondor archers normally do. But an extra 30% onto 25 pierce damage, and pierce damage actually goes through heavy armor. So in the late game, you actually want this unit. Gondor archers are really good in the late game. Now, they do get a bit outshined by the Ithilien Rangers, which we'll be going over shortly. But if you're on a tight string budget, you definitely want these Gondor archers, because you can also make them quite cheap as well. If you go for the tax upgrade in the... let me just quickly go over here. If you get this upgrade here, increased taxes, the discounts for townhouses affects your infantry or basic infantry as well. Normally this only affects the Fountain Guard and the Citadel Guard, and I also believe the Dol Amroth Knights, which is why they're also so good. Yep, that's a cost reduced. But yeah, that is what makes Gondor archers really good. They're just all around amazing. And unlike their Pikeman counterpart in their trifecta, they actually have a very good ability as well with the extra damage. And next we have Ithilien Rangers. You can recruit them from all your Ranger tents when they hit level 3. You can give them fire arrows, you can give them composite bows, which gives their ability, which does massive damage to heroes, to single entities, and just units in general. This unit is amazing. However, it did lose twice its ability to get discounted. It originally was classed as an elite tier unit, so it could be reduced by townhouses. But then when Ranger Tanks were entered, they were taken out of the elite list and they were put into the basic list because they could be recruited from Archery Rangers, and their tents were now a resource structure. Yes, that makes them better, but things have changed, making the Ithilien Rangers not as good anymore, unfortunately. They no longer get any cost reduction. So they're always going to be sitting at 600. But I'm actually going to test something because I want to be sure on that. I'm going to get the increased taxes now. They're currently 600. I believe they've been changed to basic tier infantry archers. So if this actually works, I might change them. I might actually change them to S tier. If this isn't the case, then they will remain at A tier, because they are quite expensive for archers. They're one of the most expensive archers in the game, next to the Galafrim at 900, and this is just your ranged infantry units. And yeah, you can see them here. They have the ability Unexpected Salvo, dealing triple their normal damage and revealing hit enemies for 15 seconds. So Lorien units are not escaping. Scout heroes aren't escaping. They are pretty good. Oh, there you are, Aaron Ryder. Wondered why you were there. Are we nearly done? So currently 600. Will the price drop? Place your bets. 'Cause I don't know. Yep, their price doesn't get decreased. They are not officially a basic infantry unit. However, Gondor archers, their price has decreased, and they can actually perform better than the Gondor archers. But in most cases, Ithilien rangers, amazing units, not very price. They are very good, but be wary of how much they cost. All right then, to Gondor Knights. The unit I never make because you have to build a whole new building for it. And you know what? They're actually at B tier. I would put them at C tier just because I don't use them very much and I don't have much experience with them. However, I have seen their ability before recording this, and I have to say, their ability is really damn good. Let's have a look. So, Gondor Knights. Pretty basic unit. We've had this unit through the whole stretch of Battle for Middle-earth. They're good. They do really good damage on charge. They've got really high damage. They do cost 800. However, they do get decreased when you're creating farms. And I've actually liked making farms more recently. Farms are really good. Farms are actually really good because of the Grand Harvest. And also because the Ranger tends to no longer decrease the cost of Ithilien Rangers, I've lost my love for them. I will make them every now and again if we want to spam out Rangers from a good point. But you should build farms in the early game. Maybe one or two on the front lines for Ranger tents just to protect yourself. But we'll go over that in another video. For this video we're talking about the unit specifically. So, I completely forgot. I didn't even go over the Knight's ability. So the ability is plus 50% armor against swords and arrows, but minus 50% speed. Do you know what that means? When they're in this formation, they're taking half the damage from melee attacks and ranged attacks. And if your opponent has no pikemen, this unit is arguably stronger than Tower Guard. If I know, it's an undisputed fact. This unit, the Tower Guard, is not as efficient as Anorian Knights in a melee combat with Swordsman units. So say like some Dol Amroth troops were coming up to fight me, and these Dol Amroth troops Knights came in. I honestly think one charge and then sitting inside, going into battle formation, they could kill these Dol Amroth Knights without losing a single troop. I don't know that for sure because I don't use them very much or at all. But if I were to use them, plus with the Knight Shield, they get even more armor. So that's 100% extra armor against arrows. And 75% armor against swords. However, as always with all cavalry, always got to watch out for these pikeman units. If you're not careful, they're going to die. But any archer units, one hit, splat. Any low tier infantry, splat. Any middle tier cavalry, middle tier infantry are going to get stuck and splat. Now, the fact it says against swords leads me to believe it is specifically slash damage, not chop, not specialist obviously, or cav damage. Because cavalry don't do slash damage, they do something called cav damage. And because it includes, I believe it includes obviously the mount itself. So, does that make this unit stronger than most other units in this roster? Maybe. I don't know for 100%, but they are pretty good, so they're going to be at B tier. Definitely don't underestimate these when you see them charging at you. If they get into battle stance, you're going to need some pikemen. Then next, our final actual units. I don't count Siege as actual units, unfortunately. We have the Knights of Dol Amroth. Now this unit, like the Dol Amroth Swordsman, requires the Dol Amroth Fortress to be built, the border stronghold. But also, you're required to have Imrahil. Without Imrahil, you cannot recruit this unit. However, you don't need forge blades or heavy armor to get this unit. And they have 3 pretty amazing abilities. So firstly, Shattering Rush. First, for the Liberation, they dash when they dash do 3 times more damage and slow down only half as much. And unlike with the Imladris Knights, this does not reduce their base damage. So when this is active, okay. They're doing a charge like Bull Rush for the Guardians. That's fine. That's still fine. Next we have Inspiration. Nearby friendly cavalry receive attack damage. Now if I move this unit of the Swordsman closer to our knights, you'll see no special aura going around them like the rest of our troops. That's because these knights only affect nearby infantry. So with these knights, they can boost your cavalry and also the cavalry of any other faction. Does not discriminate. Could be anyone except for Knights of Dol Amroth. And then at level 10, the Knights of Dol Amroth prepare for the sortie. For 30 seconds, they can't trample enemy units, but receive attack damage and armor. Can't be used during Shattering Rush. Now, I personally think this ability, despite sounding really cool, it's exactly the same as the Glorfindel Wind Riders, except the Glorfindel Wind Riders make it even worse because they don't actually do much in the charge because they don't have a lance. I think the lance, I don't know if there's any actual thing about it, but to me it feels like the Knights of Dol Amroth just do better than most other troops. And their trample, let me get close here, their trample is amazing. They can trample nearly anything in the game. 400 damage with their trample. Knights of Dol Amroth with their 500 health, nearly dead. Ithilien Rangers with a health of 200, dead, 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 dead. Fountain Guard, if they charge into them, they have to charge to the rear not to die, but very close to dead. These poor Gondor pikemen, if they weren't prepared, they'd be dead. Trollbenders, they'd probably survive because they'd become immune to knockback, but anything else would just get splattered. And Siege takes a lot of damage to cav damage as well. Cav damage is a perfect counter to any Siege buildings, which is why I love to have some cavalry to deal with that threat. And Imrahil isn't a bad hero. He actually buffs your units. So having these knights isn't actually a detriment at all. I think they're amazing. They're amazing when you get them on the field. Their late game abilities are subpar, but their abilities don't make them amazing. So I think this is an S tier unit. So surprise, surprise, the elite of the elite, the elven blooded get the victory in S tier. And now we come to the Siege. Gondor Trebuchet is a pretty good Trebuchet. It can get Firestones, so it is good at doing stuff. It's a ranged siege unit, so it does do a lot. It does 1240 siege damage, which can destroy any structure quite efficiently, and that's without Firestones. And the thing about siege units is their recruit time is shorter than any other unit in the game. It's stupid. So if this was up to me, they would all be all three here would be D tier just because I don't like them. However, I can't discriminate against them, so the Trebuchet gets B tier because it is really good at doing what it does best. The Gondor battering ram is resistant to archers. Does that make it any good? Well, upgraded archers actually go through that resistance quite easily. I don't know why, but they do. So it's actually only C tier because its actual benefit doesn't always work. And then we have this thing which they recently released. I personally think this on the annoying siege shield is pointless because your units are already maxed out with armor. But this is what it does. The siege shield and allied units nearby. I don't know why I went out there. Oh, the game has crashed. Basically, what the siege shield does is it gives itself and nearby units resilience to arrows from buildings and other ranged units. Basically, damage resistance to ranged attacks, which is cool, except the fact that a cavalry unit gets near it, it's dead. A swordsman unit gets near it, it's dead. It takes a while to flip around. It has to be near a building to make it work. And a single hit from a trebuchet will destroy it because that doesn't count as a arrow. But yeah. It's also the same cost as a battering ram, and honestly, I'd rather get a battering ram and try and destroy a building than have something that does nothing. So yeah, this is the list for Gondor. It is actually quite balanced. It's got a lot of good units. It's got a lot of great units, but it's also got a lot of meh. Not a lot of amazing things. But at the end of the day, Gondor is the faction of pure defense. And I must say, they do it really well. But also, when they need to, they can turn the tables and do fat amounts of damage. So I hope you've all enjoyed this tier list. And I hope you'll suggest other tier lists for me in the future. I'm thinking of doing this for every faction's units. Some factions will get a bit silly because they have quite a few units, such as Mordor and the dwarves, but I'll probably split the dwarves into their 3 separate factions, otherwise I'd be talking for hours about how much they have. So hope you've all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Farewell, everyone.